to take this full circle with Sark, I know you asked, like, do we think Sark's a good coach? Do we know if he's a good coach? Would we know? And I feel like at this point, the answer is no, because we've kind of seen it at different spots. And granted, he has grown. And so you want to sort of give him the benefit of the doubt. But I still think, like, Sark is a head coach. We know that he's not a good head coach and hasn't proven to be one. And so I'd say, like, the jury is still out. He can recruit. There's no question he can recruit, and he can coordinate an offense. I don't think there's any question about that.
For a second,
sure,
because this is part of a column that I haven't written yet that I've whispered to Anwar, because it's like, do I really want to go down and open up this Pandora's box? But
with all the goodwill that Sark's built up here,
when I look at Sarkisian, I mean, the coaches hate that we're this critical anyway. Like, we're having a conversation. Like, this isn't, let's find a way to bash. We're having a conversation about football in February, and all we have are the things that we have that frame those conversations. When I look at Sark, man, I feel like he's checking boxes everywhere. He's a great recruiter. He's now landed 2 top 5 classes as a head coach at 2 different schools. That is not something that should be taken for granted.
Yep.
He will always, I think, have a job as a head coach now, because he is such a good recruiter. I think that he's a likable guy. I think people relate to him. I think that obviously as an offensive coordinator, he is one of the best in college football, right? So, like, all these things check boxes and make me think he should be a success at Texas. The area where he didn't impress me last year as a head coach was actually on the field. And it was the issue that I had with Tom Herman in his first year, was there was never a moment where a game occurred and was won and we went, God damn, Sarkisian's a badass.
Yep.
Just, it didn't happen that way. And
your coach has to help you win games from time to time.
If you're one of the best coaches in college football, you watch at least one game a year, and that coach's fingerprints and, like, if players are reflections of their coach, you see that over the course. We saw it with Baylor. I mean, my God, was there ever a football team that looked more played like Dave? Like, I watched them and was like, that's Dave Aranda. We're watching Dave Aranda in the physical form as a football team. And I looked at Texas last year, and that didn't happen. And look, my issue with Sarkisian as a head coach yet isn't that he can't do something. I'm completely open-minded to the idea that he can become the guy that he hasn't been yet, which is a guy that's playing for championships, winning championships, these types of things, top 10, top 15 type seasons. But, he was good at Washington, but you wouldn't say he was great.
Right.
You would say getting that team where that was a good job. He did good work.
He went to his final season.
He started to do a good job, and then he got fired. And then, look, last year was a disaster. There's no other way to talk about Sarkisian at Texas yet, other than to acknowledge that someone farted in the room. And 5-7, that's what that is. It's in his first year, they were an outright disaster. And now 3 months later, we're trying to have a conversation about what something is, and they're not far enough removed away from that yet, where all we can do is look back to the other jobs that he did, where he got fired and where he did a good job at Washington. And there's no great in that. And that is my concern. And I said it a little bit in the video. Are we talking about a guy where it all looks good, like it should be working, and for some reason it just doesn't? Sarkisian has to prove that he's an above average college head coach. And up until now, that hasn't happened. And that's, quite frankly, if Texas doesn't get that, they're not going to make it.
Do you think Mike McCarthy is a good head coach?
I think he's a good head coach, but good. Look, I once called Shaka Smart damn good, and people heard that, and damn good for some people means great. Damn good to me was like very good, right?
It's not great because you would have said great if it was great. It's damn good.
Exactly. If I meant to say great, there's a word for that. They call it great. Damn good. You're still putting good in there. It's like a level of just good. It's like very good. It's got a little emphasis on the good, but it's not great. But people hear that and they think a myriad of definitions of that word. So when you say to me, is Mike McCarthy a good head coach? There's my interpretation of what good is. But you know what some people's interpretation of good is? Is he winning 12 games every year and winning and like, I have so much more respect for how hard these jobs are. That is he good? Yeah. And like, he's capable. And I don't think that's insulting. Is he better than that? The jury remains out for me. In a much more specific game day management, the head coach is so important in the NFL. And in college, it feels in a lot of cases less.
It's more of a CEO role in that capacity than.
And most games aren't played close.
Right.
You know, only over the course of the season are there even a couple of close games for most really good teams. And in the NFL, every week's a close game. So the decision that the head coach makes with 2 minutes to go every week, it either he's good or
right.
that guy should lose his job. And it's the difference between that and college football. We're really and truly, there's only a couple of those moments every season, and they may not come down to pure coaching. They don't do it in the NFL, but I mean, my God, you do a post-game show for the Cowboys. Like, there's a moment. It's clock management. It's timeouts. It's
right. It's
fourth
kicking,
and ones.
not
it's
kicking.
Just a
right.
little different.
The reason I ask is because like there's some interesting similarities here, and there's obvious differences. I mean, McCarthy's, he's won a Super Bowl. He reached the pinnacle of the sport. But there's just like this idea of a rebirth for both of these guys. When McCarthy's hired, it was because Peter King wrote about how much he had changed, and he went into the, he went into the dungeons of his basement and, found the right film, and he's changed. And it's like, well, 2 years later, I mean, how much change did he undergo? And
hey, by the way, kudos to Mike McCarthy for getting that story sold.
Oh,
it got him the job.
Incredible.
This idea that I'm all in on called me Mr. Analytics. And there were people who were like, well, we know he's good. So if he's truly evolved, like he made, and it's the area that I think Sark can get to, right? I think he can do it, but I haven't seen it yet. And I'm just not one of these guys that can bullshit people and tell you that, an apple is an apple when it's really just a big old turd.
He checks all the boxes except for the one that says he's 51-42, nearly 8 seasons of coaching football. Right. I mean, that's where it's like with McCarthy, it's, well, he's, and Sark sold this idea of like, I changed, I learned a lot. And it's like, you should. Human growth, like growth through time and learning, it's really important. But in one season, and granted, it's one season, there's nothing that says to the people that said when Sark was hired, this is a guy that's proven to be an average head coach at best. There's nothing we saw in one season that's like, no, this is different. Like we were told it's different. And I'd say the similarity there with the Cowboys and McCarthy is there too. Like, I don't feel like it's any different than what McCarthy was in Green Bay in 2 seasons. Granted, it's one more season.
I will say that's fair because look, it's not our fault that he just turned in a 5-7 season.
Right.
If last year had been a 9-3 season, I think the narrative's completely different. And we're talking about a guy, okay, he just had even 9-3, pretty good, damn good. Man. If I called 9-3 damn good, people would be like, you're crazy. Oh my God. What's damn good is 12-0. Well, yeah, no, of course. 12-0 is damn
good. There's good, there's pretty good, there's damn good, and then there's great.
Yes. And you and I are on the same page there, right? But
yes.
Maybe damn good's 10-2. I don't know. Then you're talking about a guy, well, maybe he's knocking on the doorstep. The problem is he actually has a body of work that's not tiny.
Right.
And last year, the very last season of football that we have to judge his quality in, again, it's not a controversial thing for me to say he and his staff get an F for last season. They failed. 5-7 is failure.
And they want to change the narrative. And there is a responsibility for him and his staff to not lose the locker room. When you lose 6 straight like that, you've lost a locker room.
Yeah. And look, I think Texas fans are going to watch this and they're going to want to like pull their their eyelids out. Like it is, this is the torn conversation in the souls of every Texas fan right now. Is they've seen the recruiting thing, and now they have Quinn Ewers, and you can start talking yourself to individual talent pieces that they've added, and you can see this team getting better. But the flip side to that, right? If this were like Animal House and we had the little devils on our shoulders, like telling us which way we should go, I think there's a devil on the shoulder that's just saying 5-7, 6 losses in a row all over again. And it makes you slow down a little bit and go, okay, I don't know. And I think that's the biggest thing. Texas is a big old, I don't know going into the 2022 season. And that's okay. Like that doesn't sound super ominous, but it should. Because with I don't know means could be 10-2, could be something significantly more like crippling than that. And crippling is what we just recently, 3 months ago, we saw crippling up close. And so, and if any shade of that repeats itself in 2022, then suddenly the Texas football program is in a precarious position where I think the coach is probably a little bit on the hot seat. You're not getting Arch Manning, and you're getting ready to go into the SEC, and it's what are the expectations? And I think at that point, they'll start to become really high, and it's, can Steve Sarkisian meet those high expectations? I don't know. We're in the land of I don't know, and the answers won't be coming in the next 7 months, but the questions will probably only increase. And it's what makes this season so fascinating. Because normally at this time of the year, I can give you a record of what I think Texas should do, what they should be, a correct over and under for Vegas. I'm not 100% sure right now. I hear 7.5 and I go, yeah, a 3-game improvement should. But then I start talking about the quarterbacks in the Big 12. And I'm like, all those dudes are mostly just guys.
Right.
And
and here's the optimism from me, as we've talked about a lot of things, from a pessimism standpoint. The optimism for me stems from, one, I don't know, which you could pretty much say for all these programs across the Big 12, which is good news for Texas. And here's the other reason for optimism. I found this stat, and it's incredible. Georgia and Alabama had 76 top 100 players on their roster. The rest of the country had 75.
Whoa, that is a stat.
I mean,
you tweeted that yet?
It's college football subreddit. So
okay.
I stole it from them. This one dude put together like incredible stats. But the reason for optimism here is Texas is on its way. You're stacking these recruiting classes back to back to back, and you're on your way to getting on that level. And so at that point, to your point, coaching matters less when you have all this talent, because you're out there, you're not making so many decisions on a game by game basis. At this point, it's about the CEO part of it, and it's about buy-in. If you have talent and buy-in, you will win a lot of football games.
I mean, Ed Orgeron won a national championship with a shitload of talent and a bunch of buy-in.
That's it. That's it.
And I will say this: if you really want to get optimistic about Texas, for me, it's as simple as it's the idea of Quinn Ewers plus Bijan Robinson plus Xavier Worthy. Nobody else in the Big 12. Oklahoma, year in and year out, has. but they don't right now. They're pretty close,
Right?
but they don't have a
Right.
running back at the level. Kennedy Brooks is gone, and like they've had some turnover now, and Baylor's been stripped a little bit, and Oklahoma State's probably never quite had the firepower where you would say they've got a receiver as good as Xavier Worthy and a running back as good as they're good. But like, we're talking about guys, the consensus top 5 players at their position in the country at running back and receiver. And then it's like, if Quinn is even remotely close to what he's supposed to be, you have a big 3. It's not basketball, so it doesn't mean quite as much, but you see the triplets, right? They still talk about that in Dallas. It's always the triplets. It'll be triplets forever. As far as triplets go, Texas has better triplets than I think anybody else in the Big 12. It'll be fascinating to find out if that can matter in 2022. And the thing that we talked about 20 minutes ago with the physicality of Baylor on both sides of the ball, places where Texas isn't there yet, probably the same with Oklahoma State. You know, those teams return almost their entire offensive lines. And it's like, oh, well, that's really good. And Texas returns most of its offensive line. And it's like, how many freshmen can you put on the field at one time and still be good? So, you know, there are just these things. It's like, can sex appeal win over grit and grind? And I don't think so right now in the Big 12. I do think the grit and the grind is your pathway to the top of the Big 12. But maybe, just maybe, if your triplets are good enough, you'll surpass that. And I think that that's the hope this year. It's why it's like, man, I can talk myself into 7 or 8 for Texas, but low key, if you said 10, I can at least process how it could happen.
Yep, I agree.
Even if it feels a million miles away from what we most recently seen.
That's Catch. I'm Ari. Make sure to subscribe to the channel if you've not yet already. If you've been watching this long, why have you not subscribed yet? Also, give the thumbs up button if you wouldn't mind, because that helps other people find the video as well. But for now, for GK, I'm Ari Temkin. We're out.